Welcome back to the Wayniac Nation Fantasy Football Podcast. We are in our first lull week of the season with no real Pro Bowl this year. I'm your host Wayne Cavati, the Wayniac, and I'm making a visit to the GameStop like everyone else on the Reddit and the Robin Hood today. Joining me as always are my two partners in crime. It looks like he's Fluffhead. He's had a rough day, ladies and gentlemen. So let's welcome back Dunton to the show. Dunton, how you feeling?
I'm doing all right. My team is in the Super Bowl, and I couldn't be more upset by it.
Only guy I know that hates
so
Tom
stupid.
Brady.
I'm just kidding. You know how I feel about it. I'm excited for
Tom
the
Brady
Bucs.
winning.
I'm not happy about Brady, but I'm excited for the Bucs. It's Tampa Bay, not Tampa Bay. So, anyway.
I see what you did there. See, you moved the A with an O. Very clever.
Yes.
Joining us from, it's time to take down the Christmas lights, but we'll let you leave them up. But joining us from the freezing cold
Ambiance.
northeast is the one and only FanDuel Fee. FanDuel Fee, how are you going to do this weekend without any FanDuel?
It'll be all right. It was overall, but you know what? I'm ready to talk about some guys who I am very upset with.
Nice. Yeah, this is the ass hat special is what we're going to call it.
Yeah, I got a tude tonight. Let's do it.
All right. Before we jump into the ass hat special and explain exactly what it's all about, let's just take a quick look at our picks last week in the championship games. They weren't good because I was the only one with a guy right here that likes Tampa Bay that didn't pick. I did pick the Bucs. So as I said, the Bucs were the underdog 4 times this year. That was the 5th time, and now they're 4-1 as the underdogs. So keep that in mind because someone opened as the underdogs. Although, as Dutton and I were discussing before the show, that spread is ridiculous right now and kind of juicy. But we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to talk about that next week.
We'll talk about the Super Bowl next week. Yeah, let's get into the fantasy year in review. But we all picked the Bills. All 3 of us picked the Bills. So heading into the Super Bowl for the playoffs, Fee is 2-9 against the spread and 5-7 straight up. Dutton is 4-8 against the spread. This is just playoffs, folks, and 6-6 straight up. And the Wayniac is 6-6 against the spread and 9-3 straight up. So when it comes to the Super Bowl prediction next week, you know who to listen to. GameStop. So now we're moving on. We're not going to have any FanDuel picks. We're not going to have any starts and sits this week because there's nothing to start. There's nothing to sit. So what we're going to do is, as I said, we're calling it the ass hat special. We're taking a look back at some of the bigger busts, and quite frankly, guys, are just pissed us off this year. Some of them, as we said before the show when we were talking about the guys we're going to talk about, you're apologetic to. Some of them got hurt, but it doesn't change at the end of the day. You have probably invested a very high draft pick in them, and they screwed you over. And every year, that's part of fantasy, and that's part of fantasy, as you remember, year to year. Guys, sometimes you don't even draft them. They could be the best player at their position, but you'll never draft them again because they screwed you, and that's part of fantasy.
Julio Jones.
Blackball
them. Never again.
So this year, I think the list might have been a bit larger than in years past. And the 3 of us are in the same fantasy league, and looking at our first round, you could start there with a whole chunk of players. Just for the people at home, our first round went Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Ezekiel Elliott, DeAndre Hopkins, Josh Jacobs, and Lamar Jackson. So 40% of those guys played. Not even. 20% of those guys played every game of the season of your first round picks. 20%. Lamar Jackson, DeAndre Hopkins, Dalvin Cook, and Josh Jacobs gave you a good run. I think they both played about 14 games. I think they missed 1 or 2 games each.
What about Kamara?
And then Kamara, he missed 2 games, right?
Yep.
So
I mean,
he also disappeared during the Taysom Hill weeks too.
And yet he still finished as the RB1 on the season.
Crazy. Wow. Crazy.
So you look at the first 3 picks: Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, which everyone in our league gave the team that picked Michael Thomas second a little grief, and Saquon Barkley. Yeah, a lot. Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, Saquon Barkley. 2 guys that were no-brainers, picked where they were picked. McCaffrey, Barkley. You can't be upset at them because it was injury, but you sure could be pissed off at your season having your first round pick go after the first game. Fee, you had one of those guys. You want to talk about it?
Not really. I'll talk about it. Listen, I was the one that took Saquon Barkley. Third, I was shocked that the team before me took Michael Thomas with the number 2 pick. But it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered because, I mean, I don't know who I would have taken at 3. I can't even tell you. I probably would have taken Ezekiel Elliott, who ended up being not so great this year anyway.
Right.
I would have been screwed one way or the other. Yeah. But actually, it's probably better off that I had Barkley because, he played 1 game and then he was done for the rest of the season. And it's almost better off that way because you don't have to mess around with like, oh, is he going to be good? Is he not going to be good? At least he's out and he's gone, and that was it. And
that's a good point. That's a very valid.
Yeah.
So it's almost better off having that than having Ezekiel Elliott having to deal with that shit show.
Yeah, because that's what it was.
And it's also, in that sense, Fee, it's not messing up your team. Like, you haven't had a rhythm of you've had 6 or 7 games with Saquon in your lineup, and like, okay, he's guaranteeing me this many points, and this is where my team is, and oh God, now he's out for the season, and my team is struggling, and there's no good, free agents or things like that. Like, losing him week 1 is it sucks to lose him, but if you're going to lose him, that's the week to lose him.
And to be very honest with you, the Giants were so bad on offense this year. Know how good Barkley would have did.
That's a valid point.
He did very good at all.
Yeah, I mean, and he would have been a focal point of every defense they went
against.
Defense. So,
but we talked about Zeke, and you could look at it from the outset that he did average 13.5 points a game, right? But we're talking about very inconsistent. We're talking about a guy that probably should have averaged 18 to 19 points per game. Looking at whatever site you trust, he fell in between 18 and 19 points per game for his projection for this year. And like we were discussing before the show, after week 6, he broke 10 points once. So he has 13.5 points, but that was because his first 5 weeks were monster games. And then he went 10, 5, 7, 8. Then he had the 18.4 game, 3.
And he finished strong.
6. Yeah. Well, but again, like you were saying before the show,
if you're in the playoffs.
Right. That only matters if you were able to make the playoffs. Sure, His last 2 weeks were strong, but chances are if you picked Zeke first overall, you didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
So, who cares if he was good for 16 or 17?
Yeah.
Another guy.
I mean, it was interesting because in our league, I had the 4th pick. So it came to me with Zeke there, Kamara there, Dalvin Cook there. And we actually we picked Dalvin Cook, my teammate and I, which, we ended up trading him later on for a whole other reason we can talk about another show. But I mean, it ended up being a very solid pick for us. But looking back at it, so glad I didn't pick Zeke because it would have been a struggle. My team, I think Zeke, just like you said, Wayne, the inconsistency, not breaking 10 points for that long during crunch time when most teams are making runs for playoffs, it's not what you want with a possible number 1 pick that went number 1 in some leagues. So
I'm curious about your guys' thoughts because I didn't get it. And again, here's a guy that if you look at the stats, he pulled off 12.5 points per game. He was a rookie, but it wasn't just our league that the Fresh Prince of Edwards-Helaire went in the first round. He went pretty much 5th through 7th in any mock draft, in any league that you're in.
That was hype train.
I didn't get it. I don't ever take a
rookie.
It was
hype train.
Did he get hurt halfway through the season?
He was dinged up a couple times. Yeah, a couple different times.
But even before he was hurt, he wasn't. The hype of him coming in was, you're adding this to the Chiefs offense? This is going to be insane.
But the first, 3 or 4 weeks of the season, he was insane, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think his first 2 games were really good. Yeah.
Right. First 2 weeks were good.
No, the first 4 weeks.
Were they?
No, 19, 10, 16, 10,
But
9.
10, that's not what you
I
want
mean,
from a first
if
round
you
pick.
consider
It's
10
not-
from your
it's
first
not.
round pick,
No, it's not. But if you're saying the first 2 weeks, the second week was 10, the third week was 16, the fourth was 10, the fifth was 10, and then the sixth was 19. So like he's kind of giving you a false sense of hope almost.
yeah,
Right.
and
Right.
I mean, in the same sense, you're talking about a guy that was probably ADP 6 overall, and he had
Yeah,
one
I'm not
20-point
saying he was-
game.
I'm not
you know?
listen. I'm not saying he was worth taking in the first round because he very clearly wasn't. He ended up finishing RB 22 on the season.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So
You know, he very clearly was not a good pick. I wouldn't have taken him in the first round, but I do get the hype around him.
Well,
Yeah.
the hype was what it was, and not just our league, every league
right. No,
bought
yeah.
into it.
it came
you
from
know?
somewhere. I didn't
Right.
buy into it. I didn't get it. I never take a
Right.
rookie that high.
I didn't have any of my leagues.
So, what do you guys think about Josh Jacobs? There was another guy that was inconsistent. He had good numbers. I think he was RB 8-ish, maybe
10.
10.
Finished 10.
But again, he was a guy that had a 30-point week, a 25-point week, and then kind of just floated by, and then would have another 28-point week.
Well,
I mean, he definitely had big first round running back weeks, but he also had some stinkers.
he finished the fantasy regular season strong. Then in week 13 he didn't play because he was hurt. And then he almost basically did nothing in the playoffs for you.
Yeah.
15.
I mean, and you're looking at a guy who, you start the season with 34 points almost, right? Week
Again,
1,
right.
and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
But another running back who was very inconsistent.
Right, and that's what I was about to say, because then he drops to 8. Like, 2 of his next 3 weeks, he's at 8 points after 33 in his first.
And I mean, and that's something, Gruden, you could tell was all aboard the analytics train. Like, I get analytics and it's this whole multi-back system, but it's killing fantasy, man. Like, seriously, there is no reason Jalen Richard and Devontae Booker deserve entire drives. I'm sorry, not when you have a young stud like Jacobs. That guy should be out there 3 downs. You want to spell him every now and then, that's fine. But you don't need to rotate 3 guys when you have a Josh Jacobs. That's for teams that have no offense, James Robinson turned out pretty well, but you didn't know what he was going to do. That's for a team with like an old running back, Todd Gurley, if you would, but not the second, third year back. That's a stud.
No, that's going to average you 4 to 5 yards a carry.
Yeah.
Going to get you 6 yards on a screen pass. You need to utilize that weapon. And from a fantasy
And it's the asshat
perspective-
episode, so we may as well mention Gruden as many
Right.
times as we can, because
and that's what I was about to say. Wayne,
that guy is king of the asshats.
because you're looking at week 1, 34 points, right out the gate, and then you see 8 points 2 of your next 3 weeks, and immediately you're like, oh, here we go. What's he going to do? And then you get into that, if you have 3 solid running backs on your team and you can only play 2 on your team, is Josh Jacobs going to get me 8 points this week, or is he going to get me 33 points this week?
Yeah.
You don't want to
I
play
know.
those games with a pick that high that
Right.
should touch the ball a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So moving on to common second round picks, you have the likes of Joe Mixon, George Kittle, and Fiamano's favorite person. Oh, let's not forget, before we get there, let's not forget Dak went down and got hurt, but he was playing pretty well, obviously, until then. But and then Julio Jones. Fee, we'll let you get started on Julio Jones since he's your favorite player.
I will never take Julio Jones. I won't even the 5th or 6th round. I don't want him ever. I'll never take him ever again. He's such a pussy. I don't know. Are we allowed to say that here on this show?
I mean, it's the asshat special. Just say whatever you want.
I swear to God, he's such a pussy. He's getting old at this point now. So he whether he's hurt or dinged up, and then sometimes he plays, and then he doesn't play, and then maybe he's gonna play, but then sometimes he plays, but he does so shitty that it doesn't even matter.
It's a nightmare. He's a fantasy
It's
nightmare.
not worth it.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's a fantasy nightmare. I feel that way about Joe Mixon. Like he's a guy I'll never take. I just can't trust that he'll stay on the field. I mean, he played 6 games this year.
Julio finished wide receiver 55.
Did he really? He was that low. What did he
Okay.
play? 9 games? He was on the field?
I'll tell you, but 55. That's not even in a 12 team league. That's not even wide receiver 4. Okay, he played in one. I don't even know if you can count these games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games.
Yeah.
And some of them he had 3 points and 5 points.
Yeah. And you talked about Kittle before the show, and I think you touched on the good points.
Yeah, I mean, so Kittle's a tricky one, right? Because he started the season well. He did what you wanted to get from George Kittle. You loved it. And then he went down and he was hurt and he was out for a long time. And then he comes back at the end of the season. And again, he was kind of George Kittle-ish again, but if you were banking on him, to be your tight end to help your team throughout the year and make the playoffs, you kind of were let down by his injury and it might have hurt you. I'm one of those owners who had George Kittle and then didn't have George Kittle for quite a while. And it kind of hurt. I mean, and the other thing too, San Francisco had quarterback issues, right? I mean, so that became a huge issue because I'm looking. I mean, he had a game against the Eagles. I think that was that Sunday night game. He had 33 points. The next week he had 6. So you're like, oh, great, So yeah, George Kittle was an interesting one. I mean, I don't know where he finished overall in tight ends. He finished what? I guess maybe the second tight end because tight ends were so weak this year.
Yeah.
Kittle?
Where did he finish?
Tight end 20.
Tight end 20. But he was ranked tight end 2 at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And now we're getting into like the next tier of guys with the Austin Eckler's, Miles Sanders' Kenny Golladay. I mean, that guy ruined plenty of fantasy seasons, I mean, he just every week he was questionable. And it's that fantasy nightmare you're talking about. Like, just rule the guy out. The guy didn't play like the last 12 weeks of the season. Why is he still day to day every week? Like, he clearly wasn't going to play. You were big on Sanders heading into not big, but you took him. You thought he was going to be a little bit something. And what would we say? Eek and Sanders finished back to back, right? 23 and 24.
Yeah. Not Eckler. Miles Sanders and James Conner.
Oh, James Conner, who's also an ass hat list winner of the year.
Well, listen, both of them are, and I know it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like Miles Sanders was like that bad this year, but he was. He was injured a few games, but even the games he played, he didn't do much. Consistent. I'm surprised he was even finished as RB24.
Yeah.
Like, that's still not even good enough. It's still not a 12 team league. He's barely making RB2, so you almost have to play him. But man, like, what I take him in I took him in the 5th. Well, no, that was Connor in the 5th. What I take him in the 3rd round. Miles Sanders in the 3rd round.
And where did he finish? He finished where, Fee?
RB24.
And he was ranked RB10 at the beginning of the year.
Right.
So,
and I mean, and you have to weigh that in too, right? It's not just the season that you turn in. It's like we said, like Zeke, sure, he averaged almost 14 points per game, but he was projected to score 4 or 5 more than that on the season. That's a big difference per week for a fantasy guy, And keep in mind, we're talking strictly fantasy value. We're not diminishing anyone's talent on the football field. That doesn't matter on the show. What we're talking about is what they do for your fantasy lineup.
You know what's funny about Miles Sanders? He's going to be a big pick next year, because especially if I don't know what they're doing with the quarterback. If they stick with Jalen Hurts, though, he's going to create holes for the running game, and Miles Sanders, who, presumably will come back healthy and 100%, and most
right now he's questionable to start the preseason, according to fantasy sites. Questionable with a hip injury
in January.
Same thing with your boy Kenny Golladay, Wayne.
week to week, day to
But
day.
I mean, if we're talking about James Conner, I mean, yes, I took him in the 5th round, so like he was still my 3rd running back. But at the same time, I expected big, at least pretty big things out of him. And same thing, RB 25, 24, whatever, 23. Same thing, just not good enough, especially on a Steelers team that's supposed to have the 2nd or 3rd best offensive line in the league. They're supposed to be able to run the ball. The Steelers did not run the ball at all.
No, they were terrible.
All year long.
Yeah, they couldn't get it going.
On the ground.
Where do you guys put people like Tariq Cohen, Cortland Sutton, these kind of like middle round guys, but barely got on the field because of injury this year? Are they kind of guys? Or do they get the asshat award? Are they guys that could have ruined your fantasy football season?
I'd say.
I mean, as somebody who had Tariq Cohen to start the year, I wouldn't put him on the asshat. I think he's one of those guys, like when I went and picked him, and I picked him in the 6th round based on his projection at that time of being like running back 38. Okay, maybe it's a little bit of a reach, but you're looking at the Bears. Okay, what kind of offense are they going to have? Mitch Trubisky coming back. Are they going to run the ball a little bit more? Are they going to give him the ball? You didn't know what was going on, and it was a gamble. But he's not a guy that you're going to start every week either. Like I picked him up as a backup. You know what I'm saying? So
I felt like Sutton had that every week. Like a lot of people drafted him this year in many leagues as their number 2 receiver. Like I felt like he had that. A lot of people thought him and Locke had that connection, and he was kind of highly touted in that regard. A couple other questions for you. A guy that kind of went later, but and again, a guy that put up good numbers at the end of the season, so it kind of masks how bad he was. But like a Jarvis Landry, like I thought, I call him our Tim Brown guy, and he was a guy in the past that he would get you, in a PPR league, he'd get you 10 points on a bad day because he got 8 catches for 60 yards or whatever the case is, and this year he didn't have a touchdown I think it was week 10, like that's got to be disappointing because Jarvis Landry is likely starting for you if you play in a league with flex. He's not a guy that you're picking for depth. You're starting Jarvis Landry. And I think this was a pretty disappointing season for him.
Well, and you're starting Jarvis Landry with the idea he's not going to get you a touchdown every game, but he is going to get you, like you've talked about, Wayne, he's going to get you your 7 or 8 catches, like 90 yards, maybe now and then pop one in the end zone. And when you're looking at some of his weeks and it's like 4 catches, 29 yards or something, you're like, whoa, Jarvis, what you doing here, me buddy? Come on.
Yeah. And then you have kind of guys that are like, I don't know, like every year is their breakout year, right? Like I felt like now he's 33 years old and he had a preconditioning year, but I felt like Jared Cook, right? Like 10 years ago, every year this is Jared Cook's year, and you take him and it wasn't Jared Cook's year. And is Noah Fant getting in that category? Like wasn't this was his 2nd breakout season in a row, and he didn't really break out. I mean,
he's still stuck behind whatever he's breaking out of.
Right. So does he get an asshat award? Like where are we at with a guy like that?
I don't know about Noah Fant, but Evan Ingram can certainly get the
Yeah. That's a good one.
That guy absolutely had blew it this year.
Yeah.
He's healthy all year.
And then here's another question that I think Dunton, I'm pretty sure you had him, but I think he deserves an asshat of the year award. But Will Fuller, right? You could look at his stats, and the guy was a monster, and he was leading teams to the playoffs, and then to get suspended for steroids
at the worst
at the playoff push. You got to get
at the worst possible
award, right?
time, right? Yeah, it was terrible because
he might get the ultimate asshat of the year award. Like, injuries suck. Being a bust is rough. But like being the best guy on your team and then going away in the playoff stretch may deserve the asshat of the year award.
So here's the deal, and I'll speak real quick. I picked Will Fuller in the 9th round, right? Mm-hmm. He was a steal in our league in the 9th round for the numbers that he was putting up for a while, right? And then, thank you, right at the end of the season, as my team has to win to get into the playoffs, I don't have him for week 13.
Right. Yeah.
Like, thank you, Will Fuller.
Yeah.
You know, so yes, ultimate asshat award.
Do either of you guys have a guy that maybe not necessarily was drafted highly, but just completely let you down, and you may never draft again because of it from this year, from 2020? I mean, mine's Corey Davis. I could speak on it. I needed one catch from that guy to win a championship, and he posted a goose egg on week 16. And you could tell me about the snow and the Green Bay defense, whatever you want. The guy needed one catch, and I won a championship. And he didn't get it. And he will never wear my team uniform again.
I can't say that there's a guy, for me personally, that I didn't take highly or valued highly that really screwed me over, because the guys that really screwed me over were all super high draft.
Right. Yeah, you had that
All
weird
the
year.
guys that I valued highly. They were all guys that were supposed to be very good this year. And I just got screwed between Barkley and Miles Sanders and James Conner. Okay, 3 of my top 5 picks. Oh, and by the way, Julio Jones.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
4 of my top 5 picks, all were garbage.
Yeah.
So all those guys screwed me. Barkley, yes, he got injured. I don't know exactly how I feel about that. But the other guys were just terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. What
So
about
I wouldn't say there are any guys-
FanDuel? Did you have any guys that burned you repetitively in FanDuel?
I don't, not really. I probably stuck around on James Robinson a little too long,
You did love
but
him.
he did well for me
He did.
early on in the year. But I don't know that there's like one guy that you mentioned Jarvis Landry. I always got him wrong playing on FanDuel, because I would take him and he wouldn't do anything. And then I wouldn't take him and he'd have like 10 catches for 80 yards.
Right.
Which is still good enough, like especially for where his salary always was.
Yeah.
6,000 or something like that all year. And like, he was a guy that you almost wanted to get in your lineup because, he got a lot of volume. He got a lot of targets. He usually had a lot of catches, but every time I took him, didn't do shit.
Yeah.
So
Dun, you have anybody?
So
there
I have
were
one
so many guys who were so inconsistent this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I have one guy who I picked with my last pick in our draft. Led his team to the Super Bowl the year before at quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Wasn't going to start Jimmy Garoppolo, but was like, you know what? How do you not take Jimmy Garoppolo at, last pick of the draft, basically, because of my pick where I was. And after he put up a negative 0.2 in week 5.
Yeah.
Goodbye. I mean, yeah, talk about a guy. I mean, what happens to Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Like, forget fantasy for him, Wayne. Like, real life. Is Jimmy Garoppolo playing again in the NFL?
I don't know.
We're
going to have a lot of quarterback action this offseason.
What was his injury? There is going to be a lot of quarterback action. What was Garoppolo's injury?
He had an ankle injury. That's what his latest one is, because you have to remember he went out, then he came back, and then he went out again.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a very, very large swath of quarterbacks that are moving around this year. Did you hear that Stafford, that the Patriots were looking at Stafford?
Which surprises me, because I also saw the Patriots hired back Patricia. And didn't he kind of butt heads with Patricia?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Wait, the Patriots hired Patricia back?
Yeah,
they
but
did to coach defense.
But he's not
right?
a coach. He's a consultant.
Okay.
Well, then I don't know. Then maybe that's not the case.
I mean, no, I did see the Stafford thing, but I was just in my head. I was like, that doesn't make much sense, because I felt
it might not. I mean, listen, yeah.
The ultimate move is going to be Aaron Rodgers playing for Bill Belichick.
Never happened. Never happened.
I hope it never happens, but.
Well, so wait, is he a free agent at the end of the year?
No, but they're saying he might. There's this whole
force
thing
his way
now.
out, force a trade.
Yes,
because they drafted Jordan Love. He's intimidated by Love.
I don't think
Well,
he's intimidated.
and he was talking like he was done.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
it
then
didn't
if you
sound like it.
Okay.
if you
Well,
listen to his comments yesterday on the Pat McAfee show, he was like, "No, we're going to evaluate. I plan on being back, and we'll see what happens." So who knows? I don't know, but Aaron Rodgers to the Patriots.
Rodgers is real sneaky about that bullshit, though.
Cam Newton, right? Cam Newton's got to get some ass hat of the year love, right? I mean, there were fantasy. Remember, he had those like 2 killer weeks to start the season, and everyone picked him up. Everyone was throwing him in the lineup, and then all of a sudden he couldn't hit the side of a barn with a beach ball.
Yeah, yeah, that's for damn sure. But he was taken in the 12th round in our league.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like you're throwing a dart at him and just hoping for the best, and he didn't work out.
Yeah, that's fair.
You're right.
He didn't really
Well,
waste any kind of draft capital on him at all.
Are there any other ass hats of the year that either of you two would like to throw into the mix before we bid adieu?
no, I'm more excited to talk about the sleeper picks that we had.
Well,
Those
that's
are
going to
fun.
be another show. So you calm down, and you at
I know.
home, subscribe, hit the button, and this way you'll be around when we talk about sleepers. We'll have a show on guys that aren't ass hats, and steals, and kind of. We're going to take you through the 2020 season that was week by week, but next week will be the Super Bowl spectacular.
Go
as we prepare,
Buccaneers defense.
especially with a Buccaneers fan on board. So thank you as always for tuning in. Congratulations to the ass hats of 2020. Try not to win the 2021 award.
You've been
and go
crowned.
back to boundaries. You've been crowned. Here's your ass hat, and have a great night, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.